Hi, my name is Joe Jackson. Between the years 1990 and 2000, I did hundreds of interviews with musicians for the Irish Times in a slot that was originally called the Joe Jackson Interview. When Paddy Woodworth, the newspaper's arts editor, launched its now legendary sound and vision double-page spread. The name above the title idea was his. And I once said to Paddy, "Why me, Lord?" I was joking, though editors do like to be addressed that way. Paddy explained that he chose me primarily because we both believed that the arts should be central to political debate rather than relegated to the sidelines, and that as such, popular music, as an outgrowth of popular culture, could and should be explored from a socio-political perspective. And we agreed that space should not be given to musicians whose primary aim was to sell, say, a gig or a CD, though that is too often the norm in newspapers and magazines. They had to have a good and maybe even illuminating story to tell. Either way, that slot, which if only because it was a 3/4 page spread in the Irish Times, became much sought after, and it could help sell out a gig, or so Tony Bennett once told me. And that to me was the added bonus, especially as someone who became an interviewer to meet my music heroes. I now had access to virtually any musician I wanted to interview, including longtime heroes such as Bennett, Ray Charles, and Joni Mitchell. And even if all I got was a phone interview, something I usually rejected because it didn't lend itself to in-depth discussion, I was happy to say, "You bet." What follows is one of my Irish Times interviews. Enjoy.
Well, I got a tape like weeks ago.
It's very difficult to do an interview about your new album when the person hasn't heard it. All they can say is describe it.
Oh yeah, I've had this set up for weeks. Hey, I've been lucky, I got the whole fucking back catalogue. So I ain't coming along as a long time live fan and all that kind of stuff, but I was deeply impressed by what I heard.
Oh, good.
So I'm suffering culture shock, psychology shock and all, taking on 10-year and 9-year albums in about a month.
Oh dear, I see, okay.
So you feel sorry for me? You offer your condolences to
You
me?
must feel very depressed.
No, I don't. I didn't find that at all. No, but that was...
How depressing for you. How dark and... What a dark and gloomy...
Yeah, but I'm Irish. I live there anyway, so it doesn't matter. That's our natural habitat, isn't it? Okay, so it is actually 10 years since the first album. Like it's 10th anniversary?
It was the 10th anniversary last year, I believe.
Okay.
We did a concert to celebrate
that fact. Okay, so from Avalanche to Do You Love Me? But isn't that what it is? I mean, there's that element running through it.
I think that there's a very similar kind of tone running through the whole thing, and my own. I think I've sort of been banging away at the same nail for throughout all of those records.
You don't mean that though in a dismissive or reductive way?
No, I don't. I think it's often seen that way, and people become impatient with my progress. I can see that with a lot of people, but all I can really say about that is that I have no intention of particularly changing, and that if you don't like what you heard on the last record, then don't go buy this record. I mean, it's different, but that same tone is there, and to add to that, I don't really feel that I've felt in my relationship with the world and the way I feel towards the world hasn't really changed since I can remember, and I have no intention of making a different sounding record or a different. It's not sounding actually, but a record with a different overall vision, simply to keep people interested.
Well, you're talking in an emotional stroke musical sense here. I mean, the music reflects the emotional or exploration, so that's why there's a consistency to me running through it.
I think musically, there's a lot of differences
from the first to now.
Yeah, I mean, far more than most groups display, I would say.
In what sense? In which sense?
Well, I think that we've run we've run the sort of gambit from sort of punk music, or that throughout our records, not that there's been any particular progression, but throughout our records, you can expect to hear anything from easy listening music through to sort of kind of hardcore music. I guess.
Yeah, country punk, pop,
the
whole kind of range. But I mean, tying them all together is your own particular vision of these things. Like when you do Long Black Veil or whatever, it's Nick Cave singing it. It's not Johnny Rivers or whoever had a hit with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You deconstruct or Hey Joe. I mean, it's still Nick Cave's vision.
Yeah,
The world of music imposed on that, or brought through that.
I think that's right to a certain extent. I think if you're talking about the cover versions, I think we treat them in different ways. Some are quite faithful.
Right.
Something like Weeping Ann Lear or whatever is basically a fairly faithful rendition of
Mickey Newbury's?
Of the Tom Jones.
Tom Jones did that, okay, yeah. All right.
But yeah, I mean, we're criticised about that too. Is that to do a Nick Cave version of another person's song, all you have to do is slow it down a bit, and there you've got it, type of thing. And I think that's kind of a little unfair, actually.
Is there an influence of people like to do it? I mentioned him earlier, Scott Walker, in some of those songs. I mean, those parallels have been drawn.
I think there was far more with Scott Walker. I mean, I used to listen to his music a lot, but I don't really.
Not now. I'm talking about the earlier stuff. Like I would even hear something like The Singer as being about him, or having parallels certainly with his life story. No, wasn't him. He wasn't the role model of that.
No.
Who was?
I mean, I think with that we just wanted to do I'm trying to remember how that song came about. I think actually Blixer, the guitarist, sort of discovered that song. It was Johnny Cash's. But is it the only version of that song? Yes,
yeah,
it was Johnny Cash's version of that.
I didn't know.
That came from.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it was Cash.
Who did it?
Right.
Who originally did it?
Who originally wrote it?
I don't know.
Right. Okay.
I don't know.
No, it's one of the ones
I did.
Right.
Know at the time of making King Against the Pricks, all those sort of details.
Okay. And what was the Walker influence then? I mean, it seems to me Walker of Climate of Hunter Time.
I mean, I love the whole. Well, I love the the Walker Brothers stuff, and there was also the Electrician and stuff like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. So.
Right. But that was the same chord there is of romanticism. Yeah. And I've seen that always said of his work. But maybe this criticism that people have leveled at Duke of the equally said of Scott Walker, like the tone running through all the work he did, whether it's the kind of quasi-disco night flights or the early stuff with the Walkers is
yeah, but I mean at the same time you can say anything about Scott Walker, but once you hear the sun ain't gonna shine anymore, you just have to shut up, really.
Why, because it's so good, or
because it's so good,
so powerful.
Yeah, so powerful. So, and that what's that other great? I've got such a terrible memory about this sort of thing. Anyway,
another great song of the Walker Brothers.
Yeah, the other the single.
Make It Easy on Yourself.
Yeah, I mean that you just have to sit back and shut up. Really.
Sure you do. And something like Avalanche by Cohen. These are all exploring similar emotional, psychological, musical territories, aren't there? There's an absolute link between a lot of this stuff. Don't you think, or don't you?
I think, basically it's just we did it because we liked it, and at the time of doing that particular song, it was quite a daring thing to do, and perhaps a slightly stupid thing to do, to think that we could actually take a masterpiece like this as a young sort of whatever young kind of whatever sort of band we were, and try and do justice to it.
Right.
But I think we did a slightly kind of comical and slightly irreverent version of it, and Leonard Cohen liked it immensely from what I hear, and I think we got away with it. I wouldn't try and do something like that again.
Was that the one that was then included on the tribute album which kick-started his career back into motion?
No, we did
another one, Tired of Song now?
Well, we were asked to do a song for that record, which we bluntly refused to do because we thought that the whole idea was such a terrible idea.
Okay.
Particularly at that time of his career, I could just imagine what it was going to be like, and basically it was like. I imagined it was going to be like a whole lot of people sort of paying homage to the great Leonard Cohen and being even more sort of
over-reverent.
Over-reverent than.
Yeah.
And the record was like that. I don't know if you heard our version, but we
which song did you do on that?
We did Tower of Song.
I did indeed. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
We did We were basically complete. We were asked to do it. We said no. Then we went to the pub, and came back from the pub completely pissed, and did a version of this song that I think went for about 80 minutes or something like that. And we recorded the whole thing on DAT, and then we just sort of and we went through every possible style of music we could think of, from the Manchester sound to Johnny Cash rip-off to punk rock, where someone would yell out punk rock, and then we'd sort of play this verse of it in punk rock, and then someone would yell out Tammy Wynette or something like that. And then we just edited it all down to a 6-minute version and handed it over to the French people who, I think it was French.
Yes, it was, yeah. So they got 2 versions of that song, didn't they? Are the 2 of that is that the one track that's done twice on the album?
Yeah, well, someone else does it.
Yeah.
Again.
But at the same time, Cohen apparently likes that album, even if the energy of it and the fact that these people apparently said.
Well, he would like it, wouldn't he?
Yeah, because it's right, but
he did. He I was happy to. I mean, we didn't really expect them to use that song. We just sort of sent it off, saying, "Well, here's our version. If you want to use it, use it." And they wrote back saying, "We want the whole 80-minute version," type of thing, which we of course didn't send. But Leonard Cohen did pick that track out as his favourite one. So which I thought was rather good, because it was a very irreverent version of that song, and the Hank Williams lines we turned around to Lenny Cohen lines, and all that sort of stuff. I mean, we were drunk.
But it's also, I mean, it's important to bring out the humour, because I think there's a humour there in your work too, which people tend to miss when they go on endlessly about the darkness.
Well, we did.
Irish people like that kind of twist.
We are very
irreverent, dark, kind of Beckett-like humour.
Well, I always had people used to. I mean, remember as a kid when we used to sit around and listen to Love and Hate, Love and Hate. And people would say, "Turn this record off; it's too depressing." And I always found that even I don't know, I was 12 or something like that, as an extraordinary thing for someone to say.
Sure.
That you could turn it off; it's making me too depressed, type of thing. And I always remember that. And this is something that's always been focused at me, that my music's too dark and too depressing, which I find ludicrous.
Sure. Do you have another problem with that element of the deification of pop rock stars, as in Lenny there, paying too much homage, and you get the same treatment from a lot of people, don't you?
About my music?
Yeah, you're a pretty hero. I mean, I read an interview in Hot Press and it was like, God, glowing. Guy obviously loves your work, but there was an element of that kind of Nick the God.
I mean, there is, I think that I'm the best of a bad bunch, really, and that there's not really, I mean, who else are you going to set up? You have to set someone up to be like that. Who else can you do it to, really?
But does it not give you a sense of, I got to live up to this? I don't.
No, it's just sort of irritating, and it's stupid, and
because we all need heroes. That kind of stuff.
Well,
you obviously have them too, though.
I mean, I never look at, I look at someone like Bob Dylan or someone like Leonard Cohen as being remarkable musicians and people that I admire immensely, and particularly the fact that they've continued for so long and doing things that, although this is debatable with perhaps Bob Dylan with some people, but who I certainly consider to be doing really worthy things. His last record, I think, is amazing, and I love.
This is his Back to Basics folk cover.
Yeah, whatever it is, he continues to make extraordinary music, and I find that
alone.
Well, I find that to be very comforting, and I'm very envious of that, and I hope, I find that very comforting.
But these people don't then become role models in the broadest sense, do they?
Well, actually, what I was trying to say with that was that they're not gods to me.
Right.
I don't look at them as being gods. I just see them as being immensely talented people who happen to be, working in rock music type of thing. And this whole thing of Nick Cave the God is just a joke, and I think anyone with half a brain has to realise that's just a joke, and I don't really think that anyone takes that seriously.
What about Elvis?
Now he's a god.
I knew I could puncture that one. That's that proceeding. How did you
Having said all that,
yeah, that's right. No, but come on, because I did read Marcus's comment about Firstborn. You saw that in his Dead Elvis book?
Sorry?
Did you read his analysis of your album, Firstborn, in Greil Marcus's book, Dead Elvis?
No.
Did you not read that?
Or is that the thing about Tupelo?
Yes.
Yeah, I have read that.
But about not just about the song, about the album. Like he says that, well, I thought maybe he thinks Long Train Suffering is like the answer to Mystery Train. He'd hear Mystery Train anywhere. Are there elements of that there? Do I detect rhythms of? No?
Of elements of what?
Mystery
Sorry.
Train, in your song.
What's it called again? That song? Of
Your song?
Yeah, my song.
Train Long Suffering.
Train Long Suffering.
No.
No, I don't think so. I
Okay.
mean, I think that's the influences there. Sort of,
Subliminally, as opposed
well,
to
I think that it's a broader kind of influence of sort of a gospel type of rollicking rhythm and blues
Okay,
kind of gospel.
okay. Well, what he
influence.
says about that, the whole album,
Call and answer type of song, but I don't.
which is what shaped Presley. I mean, that's obviously was stronger to Elvis than rhythm and blues bass.
Yeah.
I think, anyway.
Yeah,
I mean, I've interviewed Sam Phillips about this. I've been in Memphis, done all that shit, to get to the bottom of Elvis. But he says that the album is a deep South concept album that begins with the mystical version of Elvis and Jesse Garen's birth and ends with the elegy to Blind Lemon Jefferson.
Well, it
Conceptually devised.
I think that it's easier for someone like that to stand back and look at something like that, and it's there in front of them and they can draw any sort of parallels to it. But for me, it was the way it happened for me was that I became. I mean, I'd always been a blues fan, but I became very much engrossed as a young person in the whole myth of the whole thing. I was Australian and
the myth of which, the South?
the myth
or
of the
blues?
South and blues music and certain films and Southern Gothic literature and all this sort of stuff. All at the same time,
like
I
who,
became
Faulkner, all that stuff,
yeah,
that whole
Faulkner,
area of
O'Connor
novels.
and-
Yeah. Why? What did that echo of Australia or your own geographical base?
I just I mean, I came to that from different areas through the writing, through Faulkner, particularly
Right.
when I was young, and this sort of developed and grew into other areas. I saw certain films that had a big influence on me, like Huston's Wise Blood from the
Right,
O'Connor
yeah,
novel.
yeah.
I love this film. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I have a bad memory for names, I'm afraid.
All right. Another movie it was.
Yeah, the love-hate one, the Night of the Hunter.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, things
yeah.
like that.
Who directed that? Oh, Charles Lawton.
Charles Lawton's
Yeah.
first
Good
and only film. I mean, there were a lot of secondary. I got this from a lot of secondary places. Whereas Elvis obviously got it at first hand. It came to me as and I never ever went into it feeling that I had the same authority to be writing about this sort of stuff than Elvis did, of course.
Okay.
And I accept that.
Right.
But I mean, I just became obsessed and infatuated with this particular
Mythology.
mythology. And I thought that at the same time, it was written by an Australian, kind of middle-class Australian, white Australian. And in the end, and particularly with the novel that I wrote, I sort of invented this sort of bastardized sort of version of the South, which was completely uninformed, actually, but my own private South, where I could set my characters in and stuff like that.
Right.
So I became very, very sort of obsessed with that.
But I've seen the South defined in those terms for anybody from playwrights like Tennessee Williams, that the real South is just a construct, it doesn't exist. That the South is a state of kind of psychology being, you know what I mean? That even the people who live there see it in mythical terms. And if you've been to Memphis, that's how they view it. Even the name, the whole thing. Bono said the same thing to me about when he first went there. You don't see Memphis, there's so many mythical resonances that your perception is along those lines anyway. From Dublin, Australia, doesn't matter. Or like Mystery Train, the movie. I mean, isn't that's the reading of the South of Memphis? And the
Well, I
South?
guess so. I mean, Bono's been in Memphis. I haven't even been there. Type of
Have
thing.
you not been there? Have you not been there? Jesus Christ, I assumed you had been. Maybe you shouldn't go there.
No, maybe
All right.
maybe I should.
So the album, but was it set out as a cycle of songs to explore that myth of the South
It was
from first to last,
I
from
guess
Tupelo to the end?
of all the records we made, I did go in there saying I want to make a kind of
Conceptually
I
driven.
want to make I didn't go in there saying I wanted to make a blues record,
Right.
but I wanted to go in and make a record that had a lot of references to that sort of thing, and that was basically as much of a concept as there was, really.
And the song itself, Tupelo, which kind of, Marcus says, depicts the birth of Elvis as Jesus. I mean, it doesn't sound like Jesus being born. It sounds more like the other side being born. The dualistic. It sounds more dualistic.
I just took a lot of those a lot of the myths and threw them into the one song, you know, from borrowing heavily from John Lee Hooker's Tupelo, from the Great Flood of Tupelo, to, you know, the birth of Elvis, you know, in Tupelo.
But a parallel between the birth of Elvis and Jesus, obviously, and there are those
I think
echoes, whether you want to,
you know, I think
whether it's for people like Marcus to stand back and say, this is what I hear there, or you meant.
Well, I think that, you know, a lot of that stuff was intentional, but you know, how much of it was intentional, I'm not, you know, I can't really recall.
Why would you be shy of drawing that parallel? Does it seem a little overblown now?
Well, it would do, yeah.
Okay.
I have to say, you know, I at the time of doing that, you know, I was much younger, and now I look back on that record and I sort of squirm slightly to feel that I had the gall to actually try and do that, and I think a lot of people pointed that out at the time of making the record, which I didn't really understand why, you know, black people, for example, had rights over blues music simply because they suffered for so long and all that sort of stuff. These days now I feel slightly, I find out, you know,
that's true, that argument is true.
I don't find that it's true, but I do feel a sort of gnawing in my conscience there a little bit about that.
Yeah, but if Elvis, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis and all those people believed that, we wouldn't have rock and roll.
No, but I mean, they still they were there type of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, Blind Lemon Jefferson, for example, was that grew out of something else, a kind of extracurricular project that I was working on at the time, which was writing these short stories, fact fiction stories about people that I admired, or simply people who represented or were parts of myths that obsessed me or interested me. And so I picked up on Blind Lemon Jefferson, read a very short piece about his life, took out some key facts and wrote a short story about it, but it was completely fictional, but with certain key facts through his life.
Right.
I think there were certain characters, certain other blues musicians that were existed at the same time who feature in the story and stuff like that, and wrote this piece, like a short story about that, which I then condensed into a song, and you get this sort of strange song out of it. You know, I mean, there was a lot of that sort of thing going on.
Does any of that hook into his suggestion that you were into the kind of hoodoo conjure that hangs around the South?
No.
The black arts and exploring that as part of the blues tradition, Robert Johnson?
Well, I mean, I liked, you know, I was a big fan of Robert Johnson's.
But what does that mean going that far?
That's about as far as it went.
Really?
Yeah.
Were you ever tempted?
Not really, no. I mean, I was, as I said, I was approaching this as a, you know, from a completely different point of view, really. I mean, I was simply not acquainted with the South when I was writing that sort of thing. You know, I wrote an entire novel that's, well, like I say, it's set in my own private sort of mythological South, which which is completely bogus in that all the sort of fauna and flora and all the animals and all that, I had no idea whether they existed there or not, but I just sort of went ahead and wrote this novel about it, which is quite great in that respect, in that it is completely uninformed. You know, it's talking about one of the prime elements in it is the sugarcane growing industry, which I had read. My mother sent me a 2-page pamphlet on, and that's basically my research into how to grow sugarcane and everything. But the sugarcane motif comes up time and time again. There's the harvesting of it and the burning of it off and all this sort of stuff, which was basically invented. And in what I'm trying to say is that I approached that novel with an arrogance about the whole thing that I really enjoyed at the time, and that I actually didn't know anything. I deliberately never went there. And I also did that with the songwriting to a certain degree.
So
and it's irritated me.
None of it explored involved the exploration of Satanism or darker forces of life.
No.
'Cause I even saw that reference in the NME article about you doing exorcisms or something. What was that, a joke?
That was.
Do you have, because he says, Marcus says that it's said of Nick Cave that he has explored the kind of hoodoo conjure.
No,
you know, and you could hear that in your music. I mean, I've talked to Rory Gallagher about this, where he felt he didn't even need to go to explore it consciously, but through listening to Robert Johnson year after year after year, he felt something tug at him inside.
Well, I think
that element.
that's fair enough. So, but I certainly didn't research this in any way.
Was any of it a consequence of drug use?
Do
you call forth those kind of things?
I think.
Room's free now.
You want to go up there?
Yeah, we've got to finish it there, will we? Can those forces be called forth by drugs? Or did you?
Evil.
The forces of darkness, yeah, that's somewhat here operating within your songs.
I think I think that certain drugs definitely can turn you obsessive, and I know that definitely happened with me. I mean, I took an enormous amount of amphetamine for many years.
Right.
It's consequently why I can't remember film names and stuff like that, so you have to bear with me.
All right, okay.
And yeah, I mean, it knocks away these barriers of restraint in that are constantly around you, where and allows you to take ideas and take obsessions with things to take the hand of these things and go very sort of deeply and I guess very darkly with them, and consequently very much on your own in this sort of world. I think that if heavy drug taking, people can't tolerate you when you're heavily into drugs, and consequently you spend a lot of time on your own. So therefore, you do become involved in things, and I certainly did become involved in things that I guess are destructive, but they're also well, that I guess would be considered not particularly positive sorts of things.
But did they help produce the songs, the sound of the songs? You know, I mean, those landscapes, the musical landscapes I hear are all over the albums, or any specific album where.
I mean, I can't tell what drugs did to it, and what if I had never taken drugs, what the songs would have been like. But I think that I think they would have helped.
Well, all they do is call forth something that's in you anyway. But was there any particular recording? Is there any particular? Would you have been in that condition recording a song, an album?
Yeah.
That I hear that.
I mean, I think I was, I was heavily using drugs for, most of the records up until Tender Prey, I think.
Okay. Speed
a lot, heroin a lot.
Right.
Well, it's basically speed and heroin. I mean, I never smoked grass.
Okay.
To say that.
I never inhaled.
I never inhaled.
But yeah, I mean, so the nature of the music is obviously not being shaped, but influenced by. I mean, you can't say shaped or created from.
I can't.
You can't break it down like that.
I don't think you can. No.
Okay.
It was all.
Why'd you stop then? Love, marriage, being a father.
I stopped. I stopped. I went into a drug clinic, and I'd been busted 3 or 4 times in a row in the 1 year in London, and it was basically that. It was a choice between that or going to prison for a while, and it was a difficult choice to make.